They say some houses remember, not through stories or photographs, but through sound, through the whisper of doors that open on their own, through footsteps that echo long after everyone is gone. On the edge of the English moors, there's a house that never forgot, a place locals call Gravenhurst Estate. For over 100 years it's been empty, or at least that's what people think. Travelers passing through the fog say they've seen lights flickering in the windows and heard a woman humming a lullaby from somewhere inside. Sometimes, late at night, the faint sound of a piano drifts across the fields. Soft, slow, perfectly in tune, even though no one's touched it in decades. They say it belonged to Eleanor Gravenhurst, a woman who fell to her death on the grand staircase one winter night. Her husband, Harold, went mad trying to bring her back, and when he vanished, the house went silent. Until recently. Because a historian named Clara Morton decided to uncover the truth. She went inside that house, and what she found was something far worse than any ghost story. The wind grows louder. One deep, hollow bell chimes. This is the story of what happens when a house remembers too much. They say the moors of North Yorkshire are quiet at night, but the silence around Gravenhurst Estate is different. It's the kind of silence that listens back. The mansion stands alone on the edge of the moor, surrounded by miles of fog, dead trees, and a winding road that no one uses anymore. Time has not been kind to it. The once white stone walls are now cracked and green with moss, the tall windows hollow and dark like watching eyes. The iron gates have rusted shut, their hinges frozen in place, and the gardens beyond them have grown wild, swallowing the fountains and statues that once made the place beautiful. Yet, despite its decay, the house still holds a strange presence, proud, unyielding, as if waiting for someone to return. The villagers in the nearby town call it cursed. They avoid even speaking its name after dark. Some say they've seen lights flickering in the upper windows, faint and golden, as if someone still walks those halls with a candle. Others claim to have heard music drifting across the fields, a soft piano melody that stops the moment you try to listen too closely. No one dares to go near it, not even the bravest of the local youth. They say the air around the gates feels colder, heavier, and if you stand too long, you start to hear whispers coming from the house, calling you by name. But long before it became a place of fear, the Gravenhurst estate was the dream of one man, Harold Gravenhurst, a shipping magnate whose wealth was said to rival kings. He built the mansion in 1884 as a testament to his success and as a gift for his wife, Eleanor. Every stone, every archway, every chandelier was imported from across the world. The great hall alone could fit 50 guests, and its marble staircase was the grandest in the county. The Gravenhursts hosted lavish gatherings, balls that lasted till sunrise, where laughter and music spilled from the windows into the misty night. From a distance, it looked like a house alive with joy. But the land the estate was built on had a history of its own. Before the Gravenhursts arrived, the moor had been home to an ancient chapel, long forgotten and buried beneath the soil. The locals believed it was a place of old rituals, something that predated Christianity, a place where people once tried to speak with the dead. When Harold began construction, the workers unearthed fragments of old stone altars and carved symbols no one could read. He ordered them to be destroyed, claiming he wouldn't let superstition delay his vision. The workers obeyed, but several of them quit soon after, saying the ground itself felt wrong. By the time the house was finished, the Gravenhursts had everything they could ever want: wealth, beauty, and a home that touched the clouds. But from the first night they moved in, Eleanor said she could hear something in the walls. A faint sound, like someone breathing behind the plaster. Harold laughed it off, telling her it was only the wind. But sometimes, late at night, even he would pause and listen, and realize that the wind wasn't supposed to sound like footsteps. Eleanor Gravenhurst was everything the town admired: graceful, kind, and endlessly patient. While her husband handled business across the sea, she filled the empty halls of the estate with warmth. She held gatherings for the workers' families, hosted teas for the townspeople, and kept the house alive with flowers and music. They said when she played the piano in the ballroom, even the servants would pause in their work to listen. Her presence softened the cold, stone house. For a time, it almost felt like a home. But that changed in the winter of 1886. It began quietly. Strange drafts moving through closed rooms, the sound of footsteps echoing down corridors long after everyone had gone to bed. Eleanor would find doors open that she knew she had locked, and mirrors fogged from within, as though someone had breathed across their surface. The maid started whispering about seeing a shadow on the grand staircase, moving just out of view. One even claimed she'd heard someone humming in the attic, a tune she recognized from one of Eleanor's favorite songs, though the lady herself was fast asleep at the time. At first, Harold dismissed the stories as foolish gossip, but Eleanor wasn't convinced. She wrote to her sister, describing the unease that seemed to fill the house after sunset. "It feels," she wrote, "as though something watches me from the top of the stairs each night, not with malice, but with longing." Her sister urged her to leave, but Eleanor refused. She said the house needed her, that Harold was under enough pressure, and that she couldn't abandon the home they had built together. Then came the night of the fall. It was just after midnight when the servants were woken by a scream, sharp, brief, and echoing down the grand hall. They ran toward the staircase and found Eleanor at the bottom, her nightgown torn, her hair spread across the marble steps like a halo. Her neck was broken. The doctor declared it a tragic accident, a simple misstep in the dark. But those who saw her said her face told another story. Her eyes were wide open, frozen in terror, as if she had seen someone standing before her in the final moment. Someone she knew. Harold was never the same. He locked himself in his study for days, refusing visitors, refusing food. When he did emerge, he looked years older. The servants said he'd started talking to the empty air, whispering Eleanor's name in the hallways at night. He ordered the staircase carpet removed, claiming it covered the truth. Not long after, the staff began to leave one by one. Some said they heard Eleanor's piano playing by itself in the dead of night. Others swore they'd seen her figure at the top of the stairs, dressed in white, staring down in silence. By spring, the estate was nearly empty. Harold walked the halls alone, his eyes hollow, his steps slow and unsteady. He told the few remaining workers that his wife was still there, that she spoke to him in dreams, and that she wanted him to finish something he'd started. They thought he had lost his mind. But the truth was far worse. Because sometimes, when the moonlight hit the landing just right, the servants said they could see her shadow there, standing perfectly still at the top of the stairs, as if waiting to fall again. After Eleanor's death, the Gravenhurst estate grew quieter than ever before. The laughter, the dinners, the music, all of it vanished. Curtains were drawn over every window, and dust began to collect on the furniture, as if the house itself were grieving. Harold stopped holding business meetings. Ships under his name began to fail. and his fortune slowly thinned, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He stayed inside, pacing from room to room with a candle in his hand, whispering to someone who wasn't there. The servants who remained said he refused to speak about his wife's death, yet they heard him talking to her at night. Sometimes he would leave the dining room set for two and sit in silence until the candle burned down to nothing. The maids began finding strange things around the house. Pages torn from books scattered across the floors, covered in symbols and notes written in Harold's hand. He'd taken an interest in spiritualism, seances, automatic writing, the promise of speaking with the dead. The late 1800s were full of such movements, and Harold became one of its most desperate followers. He brought mediums to the estate, though none of them ever returned for a second visit. One claimed the house was too full of presence. Another became ill the moment she crossed the threshold and fainted before she could begin. Harold dismissed them all, convinced they were frauds, and began conducting his own rituals in secret. Neighbors said they saw lights flickering in the tower room late at night, the highest point of the house where Eleanor once painted. A soft glow that pulsed slowly, like the heartbeat of the house itself. Some nights, they heard Harold shouting, begging for forgiveness, or for a response. He kept a journal then, though much of what he wrote made little sense. "She is near," one entry read. "The air bends when she passes. The piano hums before she appears." On another page, only 3 words were written over and over again. "She is waiting." But something inside Harold began to change. He stopped shaving, stopped sleeping, and avoided the daylight altogether. When the servant spoke to him, his eyes looked unfocused, like he was seeing through them instead of at them. He dismissed the staff one by one, claiming they were interfering with the connection. By the end of the year, only one housekeeper remained, Mrs. Linton, who stayed, claiming they were interfering with the connection. By the end of the year, only one housekeeper remained, Mrs. Linton, who stayed out of loyalty and fear. She said the house no longer sounded empty. At night, she heard 2 sets of footsteps moving through the hall, one heavy and deliberate, the other soft, dragging, almost floating. In his final weeks, Harold locked himself inside the study and refused to come out. The windows were boarded from the inside, and the key was never found. On stormy nights, the villagers claimed they could see candlelight flickering through the cracks of the shutters and hear faint piano notes carried across the moor. Then, one morning, the lights stopped. When the local constable finally forced the door open, the study was empty. The air was stale, the fire long dead. Harold was gone. On the desk sat an unfinished letter, written in trembling ink. "To whoever finds this, forgive me. I thought I could bring her back. I was wrong. The house is hers now." No trace of Harold Gravenhurst was ever found. The estate was sealed soon after, its doors chained and windows boarded. But from that day forward, the villagers said the moor never felt the same. The air grew colder, the fog thicker, and sometimes, late at night, the faint sound of a man's voice could be heard echoing through the fields, calling softly, endlessly, for Eleanor. For nearly half a century after Harold's disappearance, the Gravenhurst estate stood untouched. The wind moved through its broken windows, the walls peeled in the damp air, and the gardens grew wild around it. Time forgot the house, but the land did not. Locals still swore they could hear the faint hum of music on still nights, like a piano being played somewhere deep within the fog. Travelers passing through the moor would often stop and listen, certain they heard laughter carried on the wind, a woman's voice, light and distant, before vanishing into silence. Parents warned their children never to go near the old road that led to the gates. Even the animals seemed to avoid it. The estate became a legend, a story told around pub tables and campfires. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was haunted by Eleanor's spirit, waiting for Harold to return. A few believed that the house itself had become something alive, feeding on memory, breathing through its walls. As the years went by, the story faded into folklore. The name Gravenhurst became something of a local joke, a ghost tale for tourists and thrill seekers, until one woman decided to prove it wrong. Her name was Clara Morton, a historian from London who specialized in forgotten architecture and the stories behind it. She had spent years researching the Gravenhurst family, Harold's shipping empire, his mysterious decline, and the tragedy that destroyed his life. Most of the records she found were inconsistent. Some reports listed Harold as missing. Others claimed he had been institutionalized, though no hospital records ever matched. And then there was Eleanor, a woman celebrated in old newspapers, yet barely mentioned after her death. The contradictions fascinated Clara. She wanted to uncover the truth, to separate history from ghost story. When she first arrived on the island road leading to the estate, she said she felt something strange, not fear, but a heavy stillness, like stepping into a place that was waiting. The iron gates were still standing, their metal twisted with rust and ivy. Beyond them, the path was buried in overgrowth. It took her hours to reach the front doors, her flashlight barely cutting through the fog. When she finally stepped inside, the air was thick with the scent of rot and salt. Dust coated everything, yet the grand staircase stood untouched, its banister gleaming faintly under her light. The same staircase where Eleanor had fallen. Clara set up her equipment, cameras, audio recorders, and a journal for her notes. She was calm, methodical, a scientist in a haunted place. The house remained still, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboard seemed too deliberate, every shadow too patient. The first night, she slept on the ground floor with her lantern burning low. Around 3 a.m, her recorder picked up something faint, a sound she didn't hear in real time, a single piano note, soft, distant, perfectly clear. When she played it back, it was followed by a woman's voice, whispering just above the sound of the wind. No words, just a breath, drawn close to the microphone. Clara tried to explain it away. Old wood, collapsing beams, the echo of the storm outside. But the next night, the same thing happened again. Only this time, the piano wasn't distant. It sounded as if it came from the ballroom itself. She found the piano on her 3rd day, an antique, covered in dust but somehow still in tune. The sheet music on the stand was brittle, yellowed with age, yet the notes were clear. Eleanor's waltz, the Sami. The house feels awake. By her 4th night inside Gravenhurst estate, Clara Morton was no longer convinced she was alone. The house had begun to change around her in small but undeniable ways. The air felt heavier. The temperature dropped suddenly, without warning. And at night, when she played back her recordings, she could hear faint voices layered beneath the sound of the wind, soft murmurs that didn't belong to her. At first, she thought they were echoes or interference, but the voices seemed to respond to her. When she asked questions aloud, the next morning's audio carried faint answers, whispers that sounded like they came from a great distance. Clara wrote everything down, her handwriting growing shakier with each entry. "It knows my name," one line read. "It doesn't want me to leave." During the day, she explored every corner of the estate. Dust covered everything except the staircase, which remained strangely clean. Even the footprints she left on the steps seemed to vanish within minutes. In the ballroom, she noticed something that made her stomach turn. The piano lid was open. She was certain she had closed it the night before. She reached for it, her hand trembling, and let one finger rest against the keys. They were warm this time. That night, the cameras captured movement. A door at the end of the hall opened slowly, on its own. The motion sensor light flickered, and for just one frame, a shape appeared in the doorway. Pale, faint, like mist shaped into a figure. When she slowed down the footage, Clara saw the outline of a woman in a white gown, her head tilted as if listening. The face was blurred, but the form was unmistakable. Eleanor Gravenhurst. Clara tried to rationalize it. Moisture, dust, light refraction, anything but what it appeared to be, but deep down, she knew what she'd seen. That night, she slept with the light on. Around 2 a.m., the sound of the piano began again. Slow, careful notes drifting from the ballroom. She forced herself to go and see. The keys were moving. No one was sitting at the bench, but the melody was clear. Eleanor's waltz, the same song she'd found on the piano stand days earlier. The lantern in her hand flickered violently, and for a split second, Clara saw a reflection in the piano's polished surface. A woman standing directly behind her. When she turned, there was nothing there, only the faint scent of lavender, the same perfume Eleanor was said to have worn. In the morning, Clara found scratches on the ballroom floor, long, curved marks that hadn't been there before, as if something heavy had been dragged across the wood. She followed them to the base of the staircase, where they stopped abruptly. Above her, the banister creaked. She looked up, and her breath caught. There was a figure at the top of the stairs. A woman, still, watching. Clara blinked, and the figure was gone. Panicked, she ran to her equipment. When she checked her footage, she found something she hadn't noticed before. On every recording she had taken inside the house, every photo, every camera angle, there was a faint silhouette reflected in the mirrors or the glass. Sometimes behind her, sometimes beside her. Always the same. A woman in white, head slightly bowed, standing on the stairs. The house wasn't just haunted, it was showing her something. Later that evening, she discovered a locked drawer in Harold Gravenhurst's old study. Inside were pages of his handwriting, frantic, uneven, filled with drawings of strange circles and spiral markings that matched the ones carved into the stone walls of the cellar. At the bottom of one page, a note read, "She won't stop singing. The more I listen, the closer she gets." That night, Clara didn't sleep at all. The piano played until dawn, and the walls seemed to hum with low vibration, as if the whole house was alive. She packed her bags before sunrise, ready to leave, but when she reached the door, it wouldn't open. No matter how hard she pulled, the lock refused to turn. From somewhere upstairs came the sound of slow footsteps, deliberate, heavy, coming down the staircase, and in the faint reflection of the window beside her, Clara saw the same white figure descending, one step at a time, head still bowed, her shadow stretching longer with each movement. The last line Clara wrote in her journal was short and uneven. It's not her haunting the house. It's the house haunting her. By her 7th night inside the Gravenhurst estate, Clara Morton could no longer tell whether the house was changing, or she was. Her sense of time had dissolved into the constant hum of the place. The air itself seemed to breathe. The wind no longer came from outside, but from within the walls, sighing through cracks that hadn't been there before. She had stopped writing in full sentences, her journal filled with fragments and sketches. A staircase, a face in the mirror, the words, "She's trying to speak." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.